The stars burned cold above the dying world of Velanther as Queen Selara stood upon her palace balcony, watching the distant fires consume another village. Her four delicate arms gripped the crystal railing while her compound eyes, usually filled with the ancient wisdom of her people, now held only despair. The Karzarath had come, as they always did, to feed upon the weak and claim what was not theirs. The Velanthi were not warriors. They never had been. For 10,000 years, they had built their civilization upon art, music, and the cultivation of living crystals that sang in harmony with the universe. Their bodies were slender and graceful, designed for creation rather than destruction. Their skin shimmered with patterns of bioluminescence that expressed their emotions in ways words never could. They were beautiful, peaceful, and utterly defenseless against the horrors that now hunted them. Selara had sent messages across the galaxy, begging for help from the great powers. The consortium had expressed concern but taken no action. The hegemony had calculated the cost of intervention and found it too high. The Federation had debated for weeks before voting to table the matter for further discussion. Her people were dying, and the universe simply watched. 3 million Velanthi had lived upon this world when the Karzarath first arrived. Now, after 6 months of systematic slaughter, fewer than 800,000 remained. They huddled in the capital city, protected by nothing more than ancient walls and prayers to gods who seemed to have forgotten them. It was on this night of absolute darkness that the stranger came. He fell from the sky like a meteor, his ship screaming through the atmosphere in a trail of fire and smoke. The vessel crashed beyond the city walls, in the no-man's land between the Velanthi and the Karzarath camps. Selara watched the impact from her balcony, expecting the Karzarath to investigate immediately. Instead, something unexpected happened. Gunfire echoed across the wasteland, not the energy weapons of the Karzarath, but something older, something that cracked and boomed like thunder. Lights flashed in the darkness, followed by screams that were definitely not Velanthi. The sounds of combat lasted for perhaps 10 minutes, and then silence fell. Morning came, and with it, the scout reports. A single figure was walking toward the city. Not a Karzarath, not anything the Velanthi had ever seen before. The creature moved on 2 legs, stood perhaps 2 meters tall, and was covered in some kind of armored suit that had seen better days. It carried weapons across its back and in holsters at its waist. Behind it, the burning wreckage of a Karzarath patrol could be seen on the horizon. The city gates had not been opened to outsiders in months. The risk was too great. But as Selara studied the approaching figure through her viewing crystal, she made a decision that would change everything. She ordered the gates opened. The stranger walked into the Velanthi capital with the casual stride of someone who had walked through worse places and survived. When it reached the palace steps, it stopped and looked up at the gathered crowd of frightened Velanthi with eyes that showed no fear, only curiosity. A translation device crackled to life on the creature's chest. "I need repairs for my ship and food if you can spare it. In exchange, I'll help you with your bug problem." Selara descended the steps herself, her advisors hissing warnings that she ignored. She had nothing left to lose. Standing before the stranger, she saw herself reflected in the dark visor of its helmet. "What are you?" The creature reached up and removed its helmet. Beneath it was a face unlike any in the known galaxy. Soft skin, no scales or chitin. 2 small eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth. Hair grew from the top of its head in dark waves. It was perhaps the strangest face Selara had ever seen, but something about it was oddly compelling. "I'm a human," the creature said. "Name's Marcus Cole, formerly Sergeant Marcus Cole of the Colonial Marines, currently just a man looking for a hot meal and a place to fix his ship." He glanced back toward the distant Karzarath camps. "Those things out there are Karzarath, yes. I've heard of them, never fought them before. How many are we talking about?" Selara's lights flickered with confusion at his casual tone. "Perhaps 50,000 warriors. They have ships in orbit as well, blocking any escape." Marcus whistled low. "That's a lot of bugs. Still, I've seen worse odds. He paused. Well, maybe not much worse, but close. You cannot fight them alone, Solara said. No one can. Marcus smiled then, and it was a strange expression, somewhere between amusement and sadness. Ma'am, with respect, you don't know what humans can do when we set our minds to something. We're stubborn like that. Over the next several days, Marcus worked on his ship while also studying the Velanthi defenses. What he found was disappointing but not surprising. The Velanthi had no military tradition whatsoever. Their weapons were ceremonial at best. Their walls were ancient but never designed to withstand modern siege equipment. The only thing they had in abundance was crystal, and beautiful crystal did not stop plasma rounds. But Marcus saw potential in the chaos. The Velanthi crystal was not ordinary mineral. It could be grown, shaped, and attuned to specific frequencies. With the right modifications, it might just be useful. Your crystals, he said to Solara one evening as she watched him work. They resonate at specific frequencies, yes. Can they be tuned to emit harmful frequencies, something that would disrupt the Karzarath? Solara's patterns shifted to a thoughtful blue. We have never used our crystals for harm. It is against everything we believe. And if you don't start using them for harm, you won't have any beliefs left because you'll all be dead. Marcus's voice was blunt but not cruel. I'm not asking you to become warriors. I'm asking you to survive. There's a difference. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. Show me what you need. Over the following weeks, Marcus transformed the Velanthi capital into something it had never been before, a fortress. Using his knowledge of warfare and the Velanthi knowledge of crystals, he created defensive systems unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Crystal towers that could emit sonic waves at frequencies lethal to the Karzarath. Walls reinforced with resonant minerals that could absorb and redirect energy weapons. Underground tunnels that would allow the Velanthi to move unseen. He also began training volunteers, not to fight in the traditional sense, but to support him. He taught them to reload weapons, to carry supplies, to serve as scouts using their natural abilities to see in the dark. The Velanthi were terrified, but they followed his instructions with careful precision. As he worked, Solara watched him with growing wonder. This human was unlike anything she had ever encountered. He slept only a few hours each night, ate whatever was put in front of him without complaint, and drove himself to exhaustion again and again. When she asked him why he was helping them, strangers who had nothing to offer him, his answer surprised her. Because someone should, he said simply, and I'm here. The Karzarath were not idle during this time. They watched the preparations with growing interest, their commanders trying to understand what the humans were building. They sent probes and scouts, most of which did not return. Marcus had set traps across the wasteland, simple but effective devices that taught the enemy to fear the darkness. When the first Karzarath offensive finally came, Solara was standing on the walls beside Marcus, her hearts pounding with fear. 10,000 warriors advanced across the barren ground, their chitinous bodies glistening in the pale light of Velanther's twin moons. It was the largest assault yet, and they expected it to be the last. Marcus checked his weapons one final time. Time to show these bugs what humanity can do. The battle for Velanther had begun. The night exploded into chaos as the Karzarath swarm surged toward the crystal walls. Marcus had positioned himself at the main gate, where the fighting would be thickest. Around him, terrified Velanthi volunteers clutched sonic emitters that he had helped them build, their lights flickering with barely controlled fear. Hold until I give the signal, Marcus shouted over the growing roar of the approaching horde. Remember what I taught you. Frequency 7 for the ground troops, frequency 12 if they try to climb the walls. The Karzarath were a nightmare made flesh. 8-legged insectoid creatures standing 3 meters tall, their bodies covered in thick chitin that could stop most energy weapons. Their mandibles could slice through metal, and their acidic saliva could dissolve organic matter in seconds. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and exterminated dozens of species. They expected no real resistance from the peaceful Velanthi. They were wrong. At 200 meters, Marcus gave the first order. The crystal towers activated, sending invisible waves of sound across the battlefield. The first rank of Karzurath warriors stumbled, their compound eyes cracking as the sonic assault disrupted their internal organs. Hundreds fell in the first wave, twitching and dying on the ground. But there were thousands more behind them. Marcus opened fire with his rifle, each shot finding a gap in chitinous armor. Headshots, joint shots, anything to slow the advance. Beside him, the Velanthi volunteers directed their emitters at climbing warriors, sending them tumbling back down the walls with ruptured organs. The battle raged for hours. The Karzurath adapted, covering their ear membranes with protective mucus, reducing the effectiveness of the sonic weapons. They brought forward siege beasts, massive creatures that could withstand tremendous punishment and batter down walls with their armored heads. Marcus responded by detonating the explosive charges he had planted in the wasteland. Entire sections of the Karzurath advance disappeared in pillars of fire and dirt. But still they came, driven by the hunger that defined their species. Just before dawn, a section of the wall fell. Karzurath warriors poured through the breach, their mandibles clicking in anticipation of the slaughter to come. They found Marcus waiting for them. What happened next would become legend among the Velanthi. A single human, armed with nothing but his rifle and a knife, held the breach against 100 Karzurath warriors. He moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for such a solid creature, ducking beneath slashing mandibles and driving his blade into vulnerable joints. When his rifle ran dry, he used it as a club. When it shattered, he picked up fallen Karzurath weapons and turned them against their owners. Selara watched from the palace tower, her compound eyes recording every moment. The human was bleeding from a dozen wounds, his armor torn and scorched, but he would not fall. He fought with a ferocity that seemed to transcend his physical form, as if his will alone was a weapon. By sunrise, the breach was held. 2,000 Karzurath lay dead around the walls, and the remaining attackers retreated to lick their wounds. Marcus collapsed against a broken section of crystal, his breathing ragged, his body pushed beyond all reasonable limits. Selara rushed to him with her personal healers. "You should be dead," she said, her lights flickering with confusion and wonder. "How are you still alive?" Marcus coughed, spitting blood onto the crystal floor. "Humans are hard to kill. We're stubborn that way." The healers worked on him for 2 days, marveling at his biology. His body repaired itself faster than any species they had encountered, knitting bone and muscle with remarkable efficiency. By the 3rd day, he was on his feet again, limping but determined. "They'll be back," he said to the assembled council. "That was just a probe testing our defenses. The real assault will come soon." "Then we must surrender," one of the advisors said, his lights dim with resignation. "We cannot withstand another attack like that." "You can," Marcus said firmly, "and you will because I have a plan." His plan was audacious, bordering on insane. The Karzurath mothership in orbit controlled all communications and coordination for the ground forces. If it could be destroyed or disabled, the swarm would fall into chaos. Without their commanders to direct them, Karzurath warriors became little more than mindless beasts, easy prey for organized resistance. "My ship is nearly repaired," Marcus explained. "I can reach orbit, get aboard the mothership, and destroy it from within, but I need a distraction to pull their attention away from me." "You are asking us to attack," Selara said slowly, "to launch an offensive against 50,000 warriors." "I'm asking you to survive," Marcus replied. Give me 1 day of distraction and this will all be over." The Velanthi Council debated for hours. Many argued that the plan was suicide, that they should use their remaining resources to evacuate what population they could. Others insisted that evacuation was impossible with the Karzorath controlling the skis. In the end, it was Selara who made the decision. "We will do as you ask," she said, her lights burning with a determination she had never felt before. "Tell us what you need." The preparations took 3 days. Marcus trained strike teams of Velanthi volunteers, teaching them to use the sonic weapons in coordinated attacks. He showed them how to set ambushes, how to use their superior knowledge of the terrain to offset their inferior numbers. He gave them something they had never had before: hope. On the morning of the assault, Marcus stood before the assembled defenders. 800 Velanthi had volunteered for the operation, knowing that many of them would not survive. They looked at him with the terrified determination of civilians who had become soldiers out of necessity. "I won't lie to you," Marcus said, his translation device carrying his words to every corner of the crowd. "This is the hardest thing you will ever do. Many of you will die, but if you do not fight, everyone you love will die. Your children will die. Your art, your music, your entire culture will be erased from the universe as if it never existed. The Karzorath do not take prisoners. They do not make deals. They only destroy." He paused, looking out at the frightened faces before him. "But here's the thing about the Karzorath. They've never fought a species that refused to give up. They've never faced enemies who kept getting up no matter how many times they were knocked down. Today, you're going to show them what that looks like. Today, you're going to make them afraid." The battle began at noon. 800 Velanthi struck at the Karzorath camps from 12 different directions, creating chaos and confusion across the enemy lines. The sonic weapons screamed, and Karzorath warriors fell by the hundreds. It was a mosquito attacking a lion, but sometimes mosquitoes could drive even lions to madness. Marcus launched his ship under the cover of the chaos, burning toward orbit at maximum acceleration. The Karzorath detected him almost immediately, but with their ground forces in disarray, their response was slower than it should have been. Fighter craft scrambled to intercept, but Marcus had not survived 10 years in the colonial marines by being an easy target. His ship was small and nimble, designed for scouting rather than combat. He pushed it to its limits and beyond, weaving between streams of plasma fire with reflexes born of countless battles. 3 Karzorath fighters exploded behind him, victims of mines he had deployed in his wake. 2 more crashed into each other trying to follow his impossible maneuvers through an asteroid field. The mothership loomed ahead, a massive organic construct that looked more like a hive than a vessel. It bristled with weapons, each one tracking his approach, but Marcus had no intention of engaging it in direct combat. He aimed for the docking bay. His ship crashed through the atmospheric barrier at full speed, slamming into the deck and skidding to a halt in a shower of sparks and debris. Before the Karzorath guards could react, Marcus was out of the wreckage, weapons blazing. He moved through the organic corridors like a ghost of death, killing everything in his path. The layout of a Karzorath mothership was something colonial marines had studied extensively. Marcus knew exactly where he needed to go. The central brain chamber, deep in the heart of the ship, where the controlling intelligence coordinated all swarm activity. Destroy it, and the entire invasion would collapse. He fought his way through waves of defenders, each battle costing him ammunition and blood. His armor was torn to shreds, and his left arm hung useless at his side, broken in 3 places. But still he pushed forward, driven by a purpose that transcended pain. When he finally reached the brain chamber, he was nearly spent. The controlling intelligence waited for him, a massive organic computer that pulsed with malevolent awareness. Around it stood the elite guard, the finest warriors the Karzorath had to offer. Marcus looked at them, looked at the brain, and then did something the Karzorath had never expected. He laughed. "You think you're the first hive mind I've killed?" he asked, reaching for the detonator in his pocket. "You're not even the biggest." He pressed the button. The explosives he had carried hidden in his armor detonated with enough force to vaporize everything within 50 meters. The brain chamber disappeared in a ball of fire, and with it, the controlling intelligence that had directed the Karzorath invasion. In orbit and on the ground, the effect was immediate. Karzorath warriors stopped mid-attack, their coordination gone. They began fighting among themselves, ancient instincts driving them to establish dominance in the absence of higher control. The mothership, its heart destroyed, began to break apart. On Velanther, the defenders watched in amazement as their enemies turned on each other. The survivors of the strike teams, battered and bleeding but victorious, raised their voices in songs of triumph that had not been sung in generations. But Queen Selara felt no joy. Her compound eyes searched the falling debris of the mothership, hopping against hope to see one small human ship emerge from the destruction. She saw nothing but fire and death. The days following the battle were strange ones for the Velanthi. Their enemy was defeated, scattered across the wasteland in small groups that posed no threat to the now fortified city. The orbital debris had burned up in the atmosphere, creating spectacular meteor showers each night. They had won, but their victory felt hollow. Queen Selara spent hours each day staring at the sky, waiting for something she knew would never come. The human had saved them. He had given everything for a people he had known for only weeks, and now he was gone. She did not even have a body to honor, nothing but memories and the weapons he had left behind. The Velanthi began to compose songs about him, as was their way. Songs of the stranger who fell from the sky and drove back the darkness. Songs of sacrifice and courage, of a warrior who fought not for glory or conquest, but simply because someone should. The songs spread from the capital to the surviving settlements, and soon every Velanthi knew the name of Marcus Cole. Selara commissioned a monument to be built at the crash site of his original ship, a crystal sculpture that would sing his story to anyone who approached. She personally designed the frequencies, spending weeks getting them perfect. It was the least she could do for the being who had given her people a future. On the 23rd day after the battle, as she was supervising the final installation of the monument, one of her scouts came running with news that made her heart stop. A ship had been detected entering orbit. Selara rushed to the command center, fear gripping her chest. The Karzorath had been scattered, but their empire was vast. Had they sent reinforcements? Was this the beginning of a new invasion? She stared at the sensor readings, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The ship was small, too small to be a Karzorath vessel. Its design was unfamiliar, but something about it seemed almost organic, grown rather than built. It descended slowly through the atmosphere, heading directly for the capital city. Selara ordered the defenses activated but held fire. Something about this felt different. The ship was transmitting no threatening signals, maintaining a slow and predictable approach as if it wanted to be seen. When it landed in the central plaza, the entire population gathered to watch. The vessel was beautiful in a way that Karzorath ships never were, its surface covered in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living things. A door opened in its side, and a figure emerged. He was taller than before, and his body moved with a fluidity that seemed wrong for a human. His eyes glowed faintly with an inner light, and patterns of color rippled across his skin in ways that reminded Selara of her own people. But beneath the changes, beneath whatever had transformed him, she recognized the face. "Marcus," she breathed, her lights flickering through every color of the spectrum. He smiled, and it was the same sad, amused smile she remembered. "Hello, Your Majesty, miss me." The story of his survival was one he told only to Selara, in private, over a meal of Velanthi crystal fruit that he now found he could actually taste in ways his human senses never could before. When the explosion destroyed the brain chamber, he should have died. He had expected to die, had made peace with it, but something unexpected happened. The controlling intelligence in its final moments had reached out to him, not to attack but to preserve itself. It had been dying, and in its desperation, it had done the only thing it could think of to survive. It had merged with him. The process should have killed him, would have killed him if not for the strange resilience that humans possessed. Instead, over the weeks that followed, his body had adapted. He had absorbed the biological technology of the Karzarath, transforming himself into something neither human nor insect but something new. He had rebuilt the ship from wreckage using abilities he had not known he possessed. The vessel was part of him now, an extension of his enhanced body. He could feel it the way he felt his hands and feet, could control it with nothing but thought. "I'm not entirely human anymore," he admitted. "I don't know what I am, but I'm alive and I still remember who I was, who I am." Solara listened to his story with wonder. When he finished, she reached out with one of her delicate hands and touched his face. The patterns on his skin responded to her touch, rippling with colors that seemed to echo her own bioluminescence. "You are still Marcus," she said softly. "Changed but not broken. Evolution is not death. It is just another kind of becoming." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, "What happens now? With your people, I mean. The Karzarath scattered, but they will eventually recover. And there are other threats in the galaxy. Other species who see the peaceful as prey." Solara's lights shifted to a thoughtful purple. "We have been discussing this. The council is divided. Some wish to return to our old ways, to forget that this horror ever happened and resume our lives of art and contemplation. Others argue that we must change, must develop the capability to defend ourselves. Neither path feels right to me." "What do you want?" Marcus asked. She looked at him with all of her compound eyes, seeing him in ways that went beyond mere light. She saw the strength in him, the kindness, the impossible determination that had saved her world. She saw the loneliness too, the isolation of a man who no longer belonged anywhere. "I want you to stay," she said. "Not just to help us build defenses or train soldiers. I want you to stay because you are remarkable, and because my people need to learn what you have to teach. Not just about war, but about courage, about refusing to give up even when all hope seems lost." Marcus was silent for a long time. Then he smiled again, that strange expression that she had come to find oddly beautiful. "I don't have anywhere else to go," he said. "My old life is gone. The colonial marines are light years away, and honestly I doubt they would take me back looking like this. If you really want me here, I suppose I could stay. For a while at least." Solara's lights blazed with joy. "We want you here, I want you here." Over the months that followed, Marcus became a permanent fixture in Velanthe society. He helped them build a proper military academy, teaching volunteers the arts of defense while respecting their cultural aversion to unnecessary violence. He showed them how to use their crystal technology for protection rather than aggression, how to create shields and barriers and warning systems that would keep enemies at bay without requiring the Velanthe to become warriors themselves. He also learned from them. The Velanthe shared their knowledge of art, of music, of the crystal frequencies that could bring harmony to troubled minds. Marcus found that his enhanced senses could appreciate their creations in ways his human body never could. He spent hours listening to the crystal songs, feeling the vibrations resonate through his transformed form. And slowly, gradually, something grew between him and Solara. At first, it was simply respect, the bond between survivors who had faced death together. Then it became friendship, easy and comfortable despite their vast differences. And then, as the months stretched into a year, it became something more. Solara was not sure when she first realized she loved him. Perhaps it was the day she saw him playing with Velanthe children in the palace gardens, letting them climb on his arms while he made funny faces that sent them into peals of laughter. Perhaps it was one of the countless nights they spent talking until dawn, sharing stories of their pasts and dreams for their futures. Perhaps it was the moment she realized that his presence had become as essential to her as breathing. For Marcus, the realization came harder. He had trained himself not to form attachments, not to care too deeply for anyone or anything. In his old life, attachment meant grief, because friends and loved ones had a way of dying around him. But Selara broke through his defenses without even trying, simply by being herself. He loved her kindness, her wisdom, her stubborn refusal to let despair consume her even in the darkest times. He loved the way her lights danced when she was amused, the way her voice dropped to a whisper when she was telling him something important. He loved her completely, and the realization terrified him. They were different species, different in ways that went beyond mere biology. Could such a love even work? Did he dare try, knowing that his changes might have made him something that could never belong anywhere? It was Selara who finally broke the impasse. On the anniversary of the day he first crashed onto her world, she invited him to the palace for a private dinner. The meal was elaborate, the setting beautiful, but Marcus could sense that something more was happening. Selara's lights kept shifting through patterns he had never seen before, colors that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. After the meal, she led him to the balcony where she had stood watching the fires burn 1 year ago. The night was peaceful now, the twin moons casting silver light over a world that had been reborn. 1 year ago my people were dying and I had lost all hope, she said softly. Then you came and everything changed, not just for my world but for me. She turned to face him, her compound eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Among my people there is a tradition. When a queen finds one she wishes to rule beside, she offers a formal alliance. It is not just political but personal, a bond of mind and heart and purpose. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. What are you saying? I am asking you, Marcus Cole, if you will accept my proposal, not to be my advisor or my general but my partner, my equal, to stand beside me as we build a future for my people and perhaps for many other peoples as well. She extended all four of her hands toward him. Will you accept? For a long moment, Marcus could not speak. The transformation he had undergone had changed many things about him, but not his capacity to be surprised. This queen, this beautiful and wise being who could have chosen anyone in the galaxy, was asking him to share her life. He thought about all the reasons he should refuse, the biological differences, the cultural gaps, the uncertainty of what he had become and what he might still become. But as he looked into her eyes, he realized that none of those reasons mattered. What mattered was that he loved her. What mattered was that she had given him something he never expected to find again, a home. He took her hands in his, feeling the delicate strength of her grip. Yes, he said simply, I accept. Selara's lights exploded into a display of joy that lit up the night sky, visible across the entire city. The celebration that followed lasted for 3 days, with every Valanthe singing and dancing in the streets. The songs they composed that week would be sung for generations, telling the story of the stranger who fell from the sky, saved a world, and found love in the most unlikely of places. The news of the alliance spread across the galaxy with remarkable speed. The consortium, the hegemony, the federation, all of them took notice. A human warrior had done what no species had ever done before, defeated a Karzarath invasion single-handedly, and then married the queen of the people he had saved. Some called it a political move, a strategic alliance designed to leverage humanity's reputation as fierce warriors. Others saw it as a romantic fairy tale, proof that love could transcend species and circumstance. The Karzarath survivors, scattered across a dozen worlds, called it a warning. The humans were not to be underestimated. But for Marcus and Selara, it was simply the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. They stood together on the palace balcony, looking out at a world transformed. Where once there had been fire and death, now there were gardens of living crystal, singing their songs to the stars. Where once there had been despair, now there was hope. Selara leaned against him, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in harmony with his transformed skin. What do we do now? Marcus smiled, that same sad and amused smile that had first captured her attention so long ago. Now we build something better, not just for your people but for everyone. There are other worlds out there suffering the way you suffered, other species facing extinction with no one to help them. You want to help them too. I think we have to, because someone should. He paused, remembering the simple answer he had given when she first asked why he was helping strangers. And now there are two of us. Solara's lights shifted to a warm gold, the color of absolute contentment. Two of us, she repeated. That is a good start. Together, they watched the moons rise over their reborn world, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. The universe was vast and often cruel, but on this night in this place, hope had won. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, other suffering peoples heard whispers of a human who had come from nowhere to save a dying world. They began to hope that perhaps, someday, such a warrior might come to save them too. They did not know that Marcus and Solara were already making plans to answer that hope. The story of the human warrior and the Valanthe Queen was only beginning.